Jaya Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So today happens to be the appearance day of Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. And we owe such a great debt of gratitude to Vrindavan Das Thakur for giving us the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. And over the course of this past year, we've been examining stories of the lives of these great Vaishnavacharyas from the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, from Bhakti Ratnakar, and from other Vaishnav literary sources. But Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat happens to be one of the foremost. It's quite extensive, giving so much on the life and the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it will give us a little bit of supplemental information on the other Vaishnav Acharya that we'll be speaking about. One of the glorious things about the lives of the Vaishnava Acharyas and the stories of Gaura Lila, the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one of the glorious things is that they go hand in hand with Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So Srila Prabhupada says that we have to read Srimad Bhagavatam and learn from the book Bhagavat, right? This literary incarnation of God. But also there's the person Bhagavat. And this person Bhagavat, this great soul. In the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is not simply expressed through one personality, but now we have it expressed through an entire community, an entire Sangha. And I feel as though it helps us because we have tales from the Mahabharata. We have wonderful pastimes from Ramayana. We have amazing stories from Krishna book. But what happens if things don't look like Dwarpar Yuga? What happens if things don't look like Treta Yuga? What happens for all of us in Kali Yuga? The life and pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are a little bit closer. They're sometimes a little bit more relatable for us. Not only that, but they help give us a guide map for how we want to act, sometimes how we don't want to act. They give us a guideline of how we can associate with other devotees. How do we deal with the people in our community? How do we give them affection? How do we communicate with one another? How should we find a cautionary tale in the lives of others? So today's pastime and today's life of the Vaishnavacharya is going to be a little bit of a cautionary tale. It's going to be a counter example. And I really enjoy that Gaura Lila does not just give, okay, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do. These are the lives that you must emulate. But now we also have an example of, here's what happens if we kind of stray down the wrong road, if we get a little bit sidetracked. Because there's every chance that any of us could get a little bit sidetracked, isn't it? So then what happens if we get sidetracked? Is all lost and we should be shunned from a community, never to be spoken to again? What do we do? And also, how in the world do we interact with devotees when we find it a little bit more difficult to tolerate? When we find it a little bit more difficult to be humble, right? That Trinadapi Sunichena, that third verse of Shikshastakam begins to haunt us. One should be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, ready to offer all respects unto others. My Guru Maharaj says, not looking for any respect in return. Oh, that's the part, right? The offering all respects unto others. Sometimes we feel like, I got that. The expecting none in return is the part that kind of chafes, it burns a little bit. So what do we do if we don't get it perfect the first time around? How do we hope that others will treat us? How should we treat others? So today's tale is a bit of a counterexample of how we should act, and a little bit of a guideline for what happens when someone strays from the path. Today's example is about Ramachandra Puri. Ramachandra Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And so we'll begin with a little bit more of an exploration into Madhavendra Puri. We've spoken about him before. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu takes initiation from Ishwara Puri. Ishwara Puri is a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. Right, so we've got a little bit of lineage, backstory. Madhavendra Puri comes in the line of Sripad Madhvacharya. And in many cases, this was a Sri Sampradaya originally, South India, but they were also Shankarites. So they were also a little bit of impersonalists. And we can easily forget that when looking at the lives of Ishwara Puri and Madhavendra Puri. Even the life of Sripad Madhvacharya, we can forget that they were Shankarites, that they were like followers of Shankaracharya, that they were impersonalists. Why can we forget that? Well, because Madhavendra Puri, he bound Krishna with his love and his affection and his devotion, so much so that the Lord himself appeared to him. Madhavendra Puri traveled all through India, finally arriving in Vrindavan, sitting at the base of Govardhan Hill. And he has a vision. And in this vision, a little boy comes to him, has a conversation, finally leads him to a very secluded, secret place and says, I want you to rescue me. My name is Gopal. I'm the lifter of this Govardhan Hill, the master of this village, but I've been in hiding since invading forces from foreign lands have come into this land, and the pujaris hid me underground in the earth. And I've just been waiting, thinking, when will Madhavendra Puri come and serve me personally? Madhavendra Puri awakens from his vision, gathers all the townspeople together. We spoke about this before. Unearths Gopal, establishes him in a temple, a magnificent temple on the top of Govardhan Hill. And this is Madhavendra Puri. He gives him service for the rest of his life, sometimes in Govardhan and sometimes in a town called Remuna. We spoke about Remuna. Remuna is the town where Gopinath resides. This Gopinath appears to Madhavendra Puri in a dream. This Gopinath steals sweet rice for Madhavendra Puri. So it's easy to forget that Madhavendra Puri comes from this line of impersonalists. Ishwara Puri was constantly searching for someone who he could speak the glories of Krishna with. Ishwara Puri comes in contact with Advaita Acharya. And together, they find such solace in speaking about the personal pastimes of Sri Krishna. How could these be impersonalists? Thinking anything about merging into any Brahman effulgence, any other devotional service other than specifically, personally rendering service to the beloved personal form of Sri Krishna. So we could forget. However, Ramachandra Puri is there to remind us. Ramachandra Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And we have two examples. At the end of Madhavendra Puri's life, there were two people who came to render service. Ishwara Puri and Ramachandra Puri. Ishwara Puri, the great guru of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu himself, it is said that Ishwara Puri would render such intimate service to Madhavendra Puri that at the end stages of his life, he would do everything for him. He would read to him. discuss with him. He would clean his body, bathe him, all kinds of things. Their relationship got so close. And it's said that because of that close relationship and that service to Guru, that Ishwara Puri became unlimitedly blessed. Interestingly enough, Apara Ekadashi, which is today, it means like unlimitedly blessed. So this Ekadashi is supposed to award one with unlimited blessings, sometimes unlimited wealth, unlimited benedictions in the form of anything that the heart could desire. So it's interesting that we're talking about how also worship of the Guru can award one this unlimited blessing. So Ishwara Puri got the unlimited blessing that now he becomes the Guru of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Does Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu really need to take a spiritual master? No. But for the sake of the example, for the sake of all of us, he takes a guru. And then he serves his guru. He would personally cook for Ishwara Puri. And we said, just imagine Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu saying, oh, you are my spiritual master. Let me cook personally for you. And he would make him rice and all kinds of preparations. And just imagine the rice made by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the combined form of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, Srimati Radhika, who would never prepare the same thing twice, whose culinary skills were so exemplary that she would never have to prepare the same thing twice. Granted a boon by Durvasa Muni himself, who said that anyone who tasted her cooking would never grow old, would never get sick, and would always be full of vitality. This is the personified form with which Mahaprabhu cooks for his spiritual master. These are unlimited blessings. So we might think, was Ishwara Puri completely rich? Externally, to the materialistic eye, maybe no. Spiritually, he was more wealthy than one could ever expound upon, even in the course of a full lifetime. Vrindavan Das Thakur speaks about the glory and the wealth of Ishwara Puri. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would take the dust, even from the birthplace of Ishwara Puri, and hold it close to his heart and say, this dust from the birthplace of my spiritual master is the most dear thing to my entire life. It is the only treasure that I have. This Ishwara Puri would serve his spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri, at the end of his life. Ramachandra Puri, however, Ramachandra Puri, it's said by our Vaishnavacharyas and our great saints that Ramachandra Puri somehow or other became more attracted to hearing the impersonal philosophy of Vedic science. He became more attracted to that than hearing about the pastimes of Sri Krishna and about devotional service and bhakti yoga. So when he arrived, coming to see his spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri, at the very end of his life, Madhavendra Puri spent the end of his life in Remuna, which I find very interesting. We hear about Remuna as the residing place of Sri Gopinath, right? The deity who took on the sandalwood paste devotional service of Madhavendra Puri on behalf of Sri Gopal. But Remuna is different than Govardhan. And isn't it that every single spiritual person simply wants to carry out the end of their life in Vrindavan, at the foot of Govardhan Hill? Madhavendra Puri started out in Govardhan, but spent the end of his life in Remuna. And I thought that that was very encouraging for some of us who might not be living at the foot of Govardhan Hill. Madhavendra Puri, this supremely pure soul who already has an eternal existence within Sri Vrindavan Dham, within the eternal pastimes of Sri Sri Radha Krishna. He spends the end of his life away from Vrindavan. But this doesn't affect his end destination. Gopinath was still present there. Gopinath was still giving his blessings. So I find it so encouraging that no matter where we are, if we are giving our service, if we are giving our hearts to our Supreme Person, to the deities present there, then it does not have an effect on our end destination. So sometimes we hear that one should carry out their lives in a holy dham, but the holy dham can be anywhere now, thanks to Srila Prabhupada. He's set up so many different holy places. There's at least 3, 4 here in New York, where we can forget that we are in New York. We can forget that we are in the United States. The moment we enter those spaces, we've been transported. The rest might be still happening outside. But within the walls, within the confines of those sacred holy spaces, those holy dhams, these abodes filled and supercharged with spiritual activity, we can forget everything else. So Srila Prabhupada has set up so many spiritual places here just for us. So this example of Madhavendra Puri not only establishing the worship of Gopal and worshiping Gopinath on behalf of Sri Gopal, but carrying out the rest of his life somewhere else is such an example that Krishna will follow us wherever we go. That the words of Sri Krishna, that one who sees me everywhere, means that I'm never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. Means he'll follow us. Our devotional service follows us. Madhavendra Puri tried to leave Remuna. And he wanted to go, and he says, once everyone hears that Gopinath has stolen this sweet rice for me, they will begin to offer me respect. Therefore, I should leave immediately. Such a humble soul, right? They'll offer me respect, let me move. But it says within Sri Caitanya Charitamrita that the fame of that devotional service, that will follow us like a shadow. This is Krishna's blessing upon us. You might try to run away, but the ornament of my devotional service will follow you. Krishna himself then decides to follow his devotees. He says, my devotees know nothing but me, and I know nothing but my pure devotees. And as long as they have their minds and their hearts fixed on me, I will follow them like a shadow. So now the holy dham goes wherever these pure souls are. The holy dham goes wherever there is this devotional service to Krishna. Because, oh my dear Lord, wherever you place your lotus feet, there becomes Vrindavan. So Madhavendra Puri is at the end of his life in Remuna with Gopinath. And he was lamenting. Madhavendra Puri goes into a deep mood of separation from Sri Krishna. And he says, oh my Lord, whose heart softens at seeing the condition of the unfortunate. O Lord of Mathura, when will I see you? My heart is filled with pain from not seeing you, O my love, and is confused. What can I do? This is a famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by the gopis. And now, Madhavendra Puri would recite this verse over and over and over and over again. My Lord, I'm feeling such separation from you. My heart's now confused. What can I do? What do I do? I can honestly say, once again, gift of a pandemic, right? I might not have been able to even comprehend the beginnings of even the words of this verse before. But the gift of a pandemic is, there have been days when I've thought, what do I do? Govinda, what am I supposed to do? Taking into account all kinds of variables. I'm supposed to maintain my life as if it were an ornament of your devotional service. So now I have to keep myself safe by so many different measures and means. But now that means I'm separated from you. What do I do? We've passed so many days not seeing you. Now what do we do? Gift of a pandemic is now we understand the purports. Just a small glimpse. Just a tiny bit. And that tiny bit is enough to give us such overwhelming emotion. Now we can understand just a little bit of what Madhavendra Puri was feeling at the end of his life, thinking, have I done enough? Is it enough? Have we ever thought a little bit like this, that at the end of our lives, will we have done enough to secure our place? Will our devotional service be enough? Will we remember Krishna? Will Krishna remember us? Have we chanted enough, fasted enough, prayed enough? And sometimes when we're in the midst of it, we think we just got to keep going, right? You get through this shift of devotional service, we keep going. We keep powering through. But at the end of our lives, when there's nothing else to think of, is it enough? Madhavendra Puri is thinking, have I done enough? I've been separated from you for so long. Have I thought of you? Will I see you? Have I rendered enough devotional service? Will we be there? So this is the example. And I love these examples because it lets us know that it's normal. It's not out of the ordinary to wonder, to think, I've been so far away from you, and now will I get the chance to see you? Or is it all lost? Will I be forsaken? So it's normal. It's a human thing to wonder, right? As we are all embodied souls, which I think is an important factor to consider. We hear so many times in Bhagavad Gita this term, the embodied soul. And we think, but we're all spirit souls. What difference does it make? And yes, we are spirit souls, but we are embodied. So if we're in a body, it's normal to wonder. So if you've wondered, if you've thought about it, if you've considered, if you've even had a little bit of fear or hesitation or trepidation, thinking, but will it be enough? Will my service be enough? It's normal. And then the resounding answer is, from our Lord, yes. Krishna makes a big deal out of small services. Which is not to say that we should just do the bare minimum and never try and rise to a greater standard. But it's supposed to give us hope that even if our service is considered small, right, minuscule by some other barometer, we might think, I haven't distributed as many books as that person. But have you cleaned the floor with all of your heart? Thinking this is Krishna's floor, and it's going to gleam until he can see himself in it. That's what makes all the difference. We may not have even cleaned as many floors as the next person, but have we done it with everything we've got? Did we give our all, even just once? Because our Supreme Lord promises in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. Right? If we gave our all just once, he carries what we lack and he preserves what we have. And the benefits that we get from giving our all, they don't diminish. We don't lose them. We hear about wealth at the end of our lives. We can't take it with us. right? All these things that we can't take with us. But this devotional service, the fact that we've given our all, that we can. And Krishna will never forget it. As one of his qualities, he is always generous. He's magnanimous. He's beneficent. But he remembers. He never forgets what his friends have done for him. So much so that now he takes it upon himself to save them life after life after life. Just because they've chosen to love him once upon a time. So the fact that we are all here, just in this lecture, is the result of us having loved Krishna just once upon a time. He doesn't forget. And then he begins to orchestrate our lives in such a way that now we start to remember, wait a second, there was something there. So Madhavendra Puri is at the end of his life doing a very, very human-like thing. Thinking, is it enough? Remembering, oh Krishna, I've been separated from you. My heart is aggrieved. What do I do? Ishwara Puri is there. There's another devotee, Paramananda Puri. He's another disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And they're all lamenting with their spiritual master. But in comes Ramachandra Puri, who has been hearing this impersonal philosophy and likes it. It's not so bad. You know, sometimes it would be okay to merge into the nothingness, to just at least be free from, you know, all the cacophony of things that are happening in the world. We could all do with a little bit of nothingness sometimes. Ramachandra Puri comes in and he says, Gurudev, why are you lamenting? You are a spirit soul. Remember that you are non-different from Brahman. Why should you be feeling any kind of sorrow? This is problematic on so many levels. One, Ramachandra Puri has been hearing this philosophy, and it has created such an effect on him that now he feels as though it's time to instruct his spiritual master. And that's a problem. The second thing is, now that he's heard this philosophy and it's taken root in his heart and it's starting to build, right? This oneness. What is this devotional service? He's kind of rejected that view of devotional service. And so now he's looking at his spiritual master, lamenting after the relationship that he has with Krishna, and he is thinking him to be ordinary. Just materialistic. This is a lower understanding, is what he thinks. We should all be able to rise above. Have we seen that? You ever come in contact with someone who says, but Prabhu, you're not this body. What's the big deal? What's the problem? When I was born, I was 2 months premature, and I was 1.5 pounds. That's it. Which is unconscionable, okay? Let me tell you something. I bought tomatoes yesterday, right? And they were like 59 cents a pound. And I bought more than 1 pound of tomatoes. Like it was 2 tomatoes, which would have been heavier than I was at birth, which is a totally scary thing for parents. I was maybe about this long. The average cell phone was heavier than I was. And my parents were rightfully freaked out, totally terrified. They went to the temple. A devotee heard. I said, wow, must be some heavy karma. You know? But, you know, not this body. And, you know, cautionary tale, public service announcement, that is not the thing to say to the parents when they're going through a really rough time with a child that they cared for, carried for months. You know, the mom has done all this internal work, which is a huge deal. And you probably shouldn't tell her at that point that, you know, just a soul. heavy, heavy karma. No parent wants to hear that. So my parents were even more freaked out. And at that point, you know, you kind of wonder, who are these devotees? So we kind of don't want to be those devotees. This is like, you know, we can see a little bit now, like Ramachandra Puri is coming. Gurudev, what's the problem? You're a spirit soul. Remember Brahman. We're only here for that much time, and then we merge, and it's fine. And then, you know, like, what is all this lamenting? You should be joyful. You're giving up this body. So, yeah, someone else is, we're connecting on a premature level. Thank you. So, but when we are caring for these embodied souls, all of us, these things happen. We are not ever existing on just the platform of we are souls and nothing more, right? Otherwise, why do we eat? Why are we doing anything? When anybody has any kind of ailment, why do we do anything? Why are we taking any medicine? Why are we wearing any glasses? Right? You're a soul. Just remember that the soul doesn't need those glasses. You should be able to see based on the qualities of the soul. But we're embodied. And as we are embodied, we got to understand that this happens. We have to somehow balance that tightrope of remembering that we are spirit soul, but also remembering that we are also embodied. So Ramachandra Puri says this to Madhavendra Puri. Just remember Brahman. No need to remember these human-like pastimes that the Lord somehow puts on like a cloak, and it's not really real. It's not a thing. Madhavendra Puri is horrified. He says, get out. He says, if I see you at the end of my life and I happen to leave my body seeing you, then I'm sure to take another birth, and that to a lower one. It is my misfortune that I have a disciple like you coming to preach this thing to me at the end of my life when all I want to do is think about Krishna. I can't see my Krishna, and so I'm lamenting, but now I see you. That is my misfortune. Get out. Go away. Don't come back. Yikes. So the result now of Ramachandra Puri committing all of these offenses is that he's sent away from his guru. Estranged, ostracized. The other result of committing all of these offenses and of ultimately hearing all of this impersonal philosophy is that now, later on, he decides to criticize the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So we can see how, looking at this trajectory, right, when we are sure that we know what is best, especially based on Shastra. Shastra says we're not this body. That's it. But now we can come to a place where we not only criticize other devotees, we may wind up criticizing our spiritual master. We may wind up criticizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the counterexample of what not to do. Ramachandra Puri comes to Puri, Jagannath Puri, where Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is residing. And at a certain point, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in connection with the life of Ramachandra Puri that even though Ramachandra Puri saw his own guru suffering of separation from Krishna, he was incapable of recognizing the transcendental nature of his emotions. He judged his guru to be an ordinary man, took his mood to be material, and the result of some material insufficiency. So he tried to explain to him the value of experiencing the oneness of Brahman. Madhavendra Puri reacted to his disciple's stupidity, Singha Guru's words, not mine, and his own disregard for his instructions. And as a result, the guru stopped wishing for the well-being of his disciple. So in the case of Ishwarapuri, the blessings of his guru gave him unlimited benedictions. But in the case of Ramachandrapuri, his offenses made it so that his guru stopped wishing for his well-being. This causes a dramatic downfall. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj talks about the root of the word aparad. We hear this word aparad, it's an offense, right? But aparad, we have Radha, which is devotion. We have this Srimati Radhika. Apa means to be without. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he uses this as an example to give the definition of the word aparad, is now to commit some activity which causes Srimati Radharani to withdraw her mercy. This is an aparad, an offense. To commit some activity that then withdraws, that causes the queen of compassion to withdraw her mercy. To do something that now causes even our guru to stop wishing for our well-being. This is a problem. So Ramachandra Puri comes to Jagannath Puri and he sees the disciples of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu interacting with Mahaprabhu. They speak with him, they embrace him, they offer obeisances to one another. They're in great ecstasy. And within his heart, there's this need to criticize. He begins with one Jagadananda Pandit. Goes to his house. He invites them over. And then he feeds them. He orders all of this Jagannath Mahaprasad and he feeds them, saying, you can't refuse Lord Jagannath's Mahaprasad. You must eat. Eat more, eat more, eat more. And then he takes prasad, right? One of the many exchanges is you give prasad, you take prasad. So he has this exchange with the devotees. But then after watching them eat, he says, I've heard that these disciples of this Sri Caitanya, who has taken initiation in my own line, I've heard that they are addicted to sense gratification and eating too much, but now I see it firsthand for myself. How horrible. What a deplorable condition this is for all of these supposed sannyasis to be eating so much running after sense gratification. Oh. And so then he begins to go around looking for ways to criticize other devotees. And this, my friends, is how Facebook was born. I'm just kidding. He goes looking for ways to criticize other devotees. And he begins to create situations where he criticizes other devotees. One would think he could have just left them alone. But he invites himself to their places, and sometimes he invites them to his place and he feeds them. He creates a situation where he can then criticize other devotees. Have we seen it? I know we have. Comment sections abound. This is what's happening. Sometimes what happens is you create a situation where then Vaishnava aparad occurs. And now we see that this is burning up all of the blessings that Ramachandra Puri would have had. Causes his own spiritual master to want to distance himself from him. This is what we guard against. Right? Not because, okay, so we have so many things, right? We have mad elephant offense, which is Vaishnava aparad, which means it's like devotional service cannot come back from that. Right? What we do experiences no loss or diminution unless and except for when we mess with the other devotees. Our Ekadashi cautionary tale is none other than Maharaj Ambarish. And we come back to that again and again and again. Why? Because it happens on Ekadashi. Well, technically Dwadashi. Maharaj Ambarish had been observing all of the Ekadashi fasts. Durvasa Muni comes, he demands his respect, and he thinks that Maharaj Ambarish did not give it to him. Was that the case? No. Why did he think this? Because now he's thinking, I'm a big Brahmin and this is just a family man Kshatriya. How? How can he be more advanced? Just on the basis of some devotional service? Absolutely not. Now, because of some supposed transgression, a supposed offense, just a perceived one, he wants to completely destroy Maharaj Ambarish. Sends a demon and a curse and everything. But Durvasa Muni is now chased again and again around the universe by the Sudarshan Chakra. And because these pastimes are eternal, it's not like the only time he gets chased. It's like once the pastimes round up, they go and are performed again. So Durvasa Muni, for our benefit, of course, Krishna later puts out the caveat, right? I made this whole thing happen. Durvasa Muni, you are also my devotee. Don't think that you are wrong forever. I have placed this desire within your heart just so that we have a cautionary tale about what happens when we offend Vaishnavas. I myself will protect all the Vaishnavas with my own Sudarshan Chakra. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu later on says, he says, for those who criticize devotees, for those who commit Vaishnav aparad, I will destroy them with my weapon of the holy name. Whoa! So Mahaprabhu gets very upset. So all of the devotees are now being criticized. Finally, Ramachandra Puri decides he's going to go and see Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. He observes him really carefully for many days because it is hard to find fault with Mahaprabhu. He's God. But by God, Ramachandra Puri is going to do it. One day, finally, he says, aha, found it. There are ants roaming everywhere on your floor. He lives in a hut with a dirt floor. Ants come with the territory. Like, what are we saying? He says, ants are roaming everywhere. You must have had sugar candy here that was made with molasses, and then you must have dropped some. And then that's why these ants are roaming around here. Just see. You're addicted to sense gratification. I knew it. He was going to find something because he was totally convinced within his heart, even before he found it, that Mahaprabhu must have done something wrong. Which just goes to show that when we have that tendency to criticize, it doesn't matter how many good things are happening. We are going to find the thing that we want to find. We are going to find the evidence to prove that whatever wrongdoing is occurring. On the transverse side, right? On the opposite side, on the other hand, imagine what would happen if all our hearts wanted to do was prove that Krishna is there and has an eternal relationship with all of us. Just as the same way, if we want to find criticism, if we want to find the way to criticize others, we will find that proof over and above anything. Our hearts will find that proof. If we want to believe Krishna is real, our hearts will find that proof. If we want to believe in Krishna's devotional service, then the same happens. We will find that proof no matter what. There won't be anything that anyone can say to us to make us believe differently because we want to find it. So, Ramachandra Puri finds his proof. And then Mahaprabhu does something very interesting. He says, Ramachandra Puri is the disciple of Madhavendra Puri. He's a god brother of my own spiritual master, and therefore he is as worshipable as my spiritual master. If he has found some fault in me, then I accept it. And he tells all of his servants, he says, reduce my eating into just 1/4 of what I was eating before. Give me a handful of rice and some vegetables. If you give me more than this, I'll leave Puri and I'll never return. Now all of the disciples, all of the devotees feel like they've been struck by a thunderbolt. Mahaprabhu had already taken on so many hardships, shaved his hair, wearing the dress of a sannyasi, really simple. He was beautiful and glorious as Nimai of Nadia. And now he's roaming from place to place without all of his ornamentation. Now he's going to eat less. The devotees would derive such joy from inviting Mahaprabhu to eat lunch with them every day, and now they can only offer him so much less. If you've ever done any kind of deity care and then fallen upon rough times, at the beginning of the pandemic, we might have experienced this, right? There was so much of a shortage of supply. Everybody was on alert. And in many places and cases, they had to shrink down the offerings for the deities. And I remember when I first heard it, I felt like, what do we do? Krishna, how is this possible? When we feel such affection for the Lord, that it really makes our heart squeeze. But this, now the devotees are personally present with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, eating lunch with him, exchanging with him every day, seeing him, eating with his beautiful smiling face, glancing at them, and they're all thinking, he's just looking at me, accepting my devotional service. Now shrunk down to 1/4. And he did this for many days. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita says some days he would treat Ramachandra Puri with the utmost respect. Some days he would treat him as though he didn't exist. They say such are the mysterious, inexplicable pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As we continue in this connection, we see that Ramachandra Puri tells Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that a sannyasi is not supposed to gratify his senses, right? He should fill his belly with only the bare minimum. And so then he tells him, he says, I see that you've become thin. I heard that you cut your eating down. But this kind of dry renunciation is not the religion of a sannyasi either. A sannyasi eats as much as is necessary to maintain his body, but also without engaging in sense gratification. And then he becomes perfect in the discipline of knowledge. There's no making this guy happy. Ramachandra Puri finds fault if Mahaprabhu eats. Ramachandra Puri finds fault if Mahaprabhu does not eat. As oh, you ate too much. Now you didn't eat enough. There's no making him happy because his heart is dead set on finding the criticism. In the meantime, Paramananda Puri, who we heard about, also a god brother of Ishwara Puri, he finds out that Mahaprabhu has cut down his eating and he comes and he says, what are you doing? Don't listen to Ramachandra Puri. I know him. Our spiritual master was not fond of him. You should not do this. He says, by nature, he's a slanderer. It's not wise to give up your eating on his say-so. It's his, he goes and he makes someone eat more than they want. Then he criticizes that person for overeating. It says 2 kinds of activities are condemned in the revealed scriptures. Srimad Bhagavatam says, one should neither praise nor criticize the activities of others which result from their nature, because everything in the universe is a combination of the material nature and the living souls, and thus is one soul entity. So no praise and no criticism, but for what, right? No praise and no criticism for the things that come naturally. Eating is a thing that's done naturally. So you don't normally praise somebody like, oh, you're such a good eater, unless once they're over the age of 6 months old, you kind of stop praising them for eating really well, right? Before then, You think, oh, you did such a good job when they're babies, because you need them to eat. But after that age, after they've grown up past 6 months to a year, you stop praising them because it's a natural thing. So sometimes you can get caught up. One should neither praise nor criticize the activities of others, but that is not the end of the sentence in Srimad Bhagavatam. The activities of others that result from nature. This is not to say that we should never praise or criticize the activities of anybody. So what Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says is that Ramachandra Puri would only obey the first. He would abandon all praise of others. But although he knows the second, not criticizing, should be prominent, he neglects that injunction. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, the above mentioned verse from Srimad Bhagavatam gives two injunctions. The first is that one should not praise, and the second is that one should not criticize. It is generally said that the rule which is given later takes precedence over the previously given injunctions. From this, we can understand that to praise someone is not so dangerous, while one should avoid criticism. Here, however, Ramachandra Puri observed the injunction to avoid praising others, but he did not observe the prohibition against criticism. So this is a big deal. Sometimes we can hear that, you stay away from praise and criticism. And then there are a lot of people who will hear that. And I've even heard it said, they're like, so I don't praise anybody. Well, that's ridiculous. We have to understand that the avoiding the criticism has more prominence. This is what Ramachandra Puri did not do. So Paramananda Puri says, please just eat a little bit more. And so Mahaprabhu raises it. Instead of a quarter, he was eating a half of what he was eating before. Of course, Ramachandra Puri is still not happy, but at some points, like we said, the Lord would offer him all respects, and then sometimes he would pretend as if he didn't exist at all. Also, a lesson for all of us, right? My sister has given me a mantra, a really, really, really good mantra, which goes hand in hand with this teaching. Sometimes there are things that we see on social media, and we think, that's a very valid point. And then sometimes we see things on social media and she says, just keep scrolling. And so I feel like this is Mahaprabhu. He sees Ramachandra Puri and sometimes he would offer him all respects and sometimes he just keeps scrolling. Pretend as if he didn't exist. Sometimes for the benefit, for the health of our spiritual lives, we have to keep scrolling. Finally, Ramachandra Puri decides to go on pilgrimage and visit some of the other holy places within India. When he leaves Puri, all of the devotees have a festival as though it is the end of Chaturmas, as though all of their lives have returned to them. And the first thing they do is have sumptuous prasadam, because there's no one there to criticize them if they do. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu resumes his eating. And all of the devotees resume their association with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. But also, it is said within Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, written by Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, see, I told you we had to merge, we had to connect the two. At some points, it is said that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stays with Ramachandra Puri for some time. We hear later on, the deeper meaning is that when he was traveling, he told people that he was staying with Ramachandra Puri, but really he would stay with the devotees because he preferred their association more. He preferred the association of the devotees. So this is a very, very, very important injunction for us. Because what happens? Right? All of them believed in this Vedic knowledge. But there was a huge discrepancy. What do we learn from this pastime of Ramachandra Puri, which is a pastime? He holds an eternal position, which we'll get to in a second. But so then what's the purpose of this pastime? And looking at the life of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, one of the tenets, one of the things that we should observe for the health of our spiritual lives is that absolutely we should remain in the association of devotees. But what kind? Devotees who are like-minded, devotees whose hearts have the same devotional mood and service that our hearts have, and devotees who wish for our well-being. So sometimes we hear one should associate with devotees, and then we all think, let's all associate with all the devotees. But no, not all devotees are created equal. We have to associate with like-minded, like-hearted devotees. Those devotees who have the same devotional inclinations that we do. Otherwise, it will drag us down. Otherwise, it will cause harm to our devotional creeper. We have a little plant in a garden. We've just planted. We have to be careful. So it is okay to look at all devotees and give them all respects, not expect any in return, but also to understand our hearts may be different. I just may have a different understanding than that devotee. Does that make them any less of a devotee? No. But does that mean that I should invite them over for dinner all the time and take them on as my spiritual master? No. Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj would say, in this respect, he says, the God brother of my guru is also as worshipable as my guru, but I also have to understand the mood of my guru. I must understand the heart of my guru. That's our duty as disciples, to imbibe the mood of the spiritual master. This is what we get during initiations, right? So we hear sometimes within initiations that they give you a new mantra that you had not been chanting before, but the mantra that we get during first initiation is the Maha Mantra, and you have to have been chanting that before you take initiation. So what are we getting? And the disciples of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and Gaur Govinda Maharaj has said, we imbibe the mood of the spiritual master. So we have to think about, what is the mood of my guru? He understands my heart. And then we have to be careful to choose a spiritual master who understands our heart. In this case, there was a disconnect between Madhavendra Puri and Ramachandra Puri, which caused the crumbling of Ramachandra Puri's spiritual life. We have to get one that understands our hearts, that can understand our nature. Otherwise, what if we wind up causing offenses to great devotees based on our limited understanding? But if we have a spiritual master who understands our heart and we can understand their mood, then there becomes such a harmonious synergy between them that we get the blessings like Ishwara Puri, unlimitedly. So Vaishnava association is so extremely important, but we have to use our discernment, right? Our discerning nature, which is so important within bhakti. We think, do we give up all thought during bhakti? Do we give up thinking for ourselves? No. We refine it. And we can tailor it. And we can still balance between thinking. Everyone is a devotee of Krishna. And then we use our discernment. We use our discretion. And then we think, but these devotees over here, they speak to my heart. These devotees over here, they understand me, even without me having to say anything. These devotees over here, this is my tribe. These are my people. They understand how wild and crazy I'm going to be and obsessive about Govinda. But if I was in a place where they didn't understand it at all, they say, oh, but all deities are the same. What are you saying? Whoa, wait a second. we have to be able to be in a place with people who can nurture our spiritual lives. So one, we should have a spiritual life. Have a spiritual life, have a heart filled with devotion, but then find those people that are like-minded on the same wavelength. It's incredibly important to our spiritual well-being and to the growth of our spiritual lives and how we can advance. Likewise, we should find people who preach to that devotional sentiment that we have. Does it mean that somebody else is preaching the wrong thing? Not necessarily. But is it okay if their preaching style doesn't speak to your heart? It's totally okay. We can offer respect to them from afar and find those that do speak to us. Ishwara Puri searched long and hard before he found Advaita Acharya. We see this throughout all of the pastimes within Gaura Lila. We have people who are best friends. We have people who are always together. And that was okay. And sometimes it was known the three of them are always going to be together. It wasn't said like you should, but you have to treat them all equally. You have to be, no, it was understood. Some people understood the hearts of others more. That's what made them stronger. That's what made them more able to continue their devotional service and to do more devotional service. They found like-minded people. Even with Shyamananda Pandit. Shyamananda Pandit was initiated by Hridaya Caitanya. But Hridaya Caitanya worshipped Krishna Balaram in the mood of fraternal friendship, brotherly love. But when Shyamananda Pandit got with Jiva Goswami, in his heart, he found that there was more relationship there. He understood the pastimes of Radha Krishna. That's what Shyamananda Pandit wanted. And his spiritual life grew in leaps and bounds. Does it mean that he was a bad disciple? No. But he found his people. So it is so important for us to keep scrolling, to also recognize when we see that there are situations that are set up that will cause Vaishnava aparad, and we can go the other way. We can just keep scrolling. And sometimes we can see that there are fine points to be had. But we should remember, is this speaking to my heart? Is this preaching in a way that I can really understand and resonate with? If not, I have to try and find that message in a different way. And it's okay to search for that message in a different way, because it's for the protection of our spiritual lives. So this is what we learned from Sri Ramachandra Puri. But mysteriously, what is this? What is this about Ramachandra Puri? He adds flavor, spice to the prasad of this Gaura Lila. If everything was just going fine, nobody ever did anything, how would we have the drama that keeps us enraptured into these pastimes? So he provides a very much needed spice. But who is this Ramachandra Puri? Gaura Ganodeshtapika describes that he was Vibhishan, brother of Ravan, in the pastimes of the Ramayana. So now the one Vaishnav brother of Ravan takes birth as Ramachandra Puri in Gaura Lila. So remember, we said everybody wants to come for Gaura Lila. And I remember thinking the other day, I was talking to my sister about this lecture. I said, wow, was that the only ride he could find? I'm so sorry for poor Vibhishan. He tried. He just wanted to serve Sri Ram, dedicated his life. So that's the only ride he could find. No problem. He was still going to see Mahaprabhu. But also there was another personality, Jatila. Jatila is the mother-in-law of Srimati Radharani. And as the mother-in-law of Srimati Radharani, we would think everyone loves Srimati Radharani. Everyone praises her, except for two people, Jatila and Kutila, the mother and sister-in-law. So the mother-in-law and the sister-in-law of Radharani, all they do is criticize her. She can never do anything right in their eyes. She can't cook properly. until somebody else praises her cooking, and then it's the best cooking. So they say that when she gets this boon from Durvasa Muni, Yashoda Mata comes and she comes to Jatila and she says, I want that Radharani should cook for my Krishna. And Jatila says, no, absolutely not. And so then Yashoda Mata has to take another tactic. Because Jatila can only think that Radharani only does things poorly. So Yashoda Rani says, but she's gotten this boon from Durvasa Muni, that anyone who eats it, they'll be cured of all diseases. They'll never be sick. They'll always be full of vitality and energy. And so Nanda Maharaj is the king of Braj. Don't you want that your daughter-in-law should gain all of this fame from cooking for the son of the king of Braj? Now all of a sudden Jatila is saying, yes, yes, yes. Of course, my daughter-in-law is the best cook. Of course she is. Of course she should have gotten this boon from Durvasa Muni. What are you saying? My son has her for a wife, and thus my family, their wealth has been increased. Fine, take it. She should cook for Krishna every day, no problem. But other than that, all she does is criticize Srimati Radharani. So it is not out of the ordinary to see that Ramachandra Puri combined forms of Vibhishan and this Jatila would be criticizing Mahaprabhu. But everyone has a place in Krishna's pastimes. Krishna did not say, no, you can't be here. He embraces it all and says, now you get to add spice to the flavor of these pastimes. Jatila adds a very interesting mood when everyone is there assembled with Krishna and they think everything is going well. In the dramatic course of these pastimes, someone says, wait, Jatila's coming. And then everybody runs helter-skelter. Sometimes Krishna has to take very many unique, mysterious forms just to hide himself from being caught by Jatila, associating with Radharani. Sometimes he takes the form of Durga Mata herself, just to hide. Sometimes he creates miracles. Sometimes he takes the form of Abhimanyu, the son of Jatila. And he says, oh, mother, you should be on the lookout. I've heard that Krishna, he's taken my own form and he's coming here later today just to associate with your chaste daughter-in-law. You should protect her at all costs. I'm going to go inside, but you wait. You make sure he doesn't come here looking like me. She thinks, oh, I'll catch him. And so then sometimes when Abhimanyu, the real Abhimanyu, comes back home, she beats him with a stick. Thinking, you are Krishna, you can't fool me. He says, Ma, what are you doing? And she beats him with a stick. There are many times when she throws cow dung at him. Get away from here. You cannot spoil the sanctity of this house. I've got my eye on you. I know exactly who you are. So I'm your son. That's exactly what Krishna in the disguise of Abhimanyu would say. So this is Jatila adding all of the flavor to the pastimes of Sri Krishna. So sometimes when Krishna desires that these counterexamples should be there, they're to add spice into the pastimes. But also on a sad note, for these devotees, as embodied souls in that pastime, it's kind of a little bit of a sojourn, right? It's a hard journey. It is not an easy life when your spiritual master stops wishing for your well-being. Nothing good can come of that. So we want to guard against becoming those people. But also we can understand that when we do see those people, Krishna will not condemn anyone. So we have to walk that fine line between wanting to protect ourselves and sometimes creating a healthy distance and falling into the trap of even criticizing the criticizers. Because then what good does that do for us? Sometimes I think, well, what to do? And then I always caution myself, well, then better that I just go and find a good pastime. Rather than criticizing the criticizers and getting caught up in this whole thing of criticism, why don't I go find a good pastime that I really enjoy? And if I can find a good pastime that I really enjoy, let me tell somebody else about it. Krishna has given us so many amazing things to talk about. Let me spend my time doing that rather than making my own heart sad with the endless criticism that can go on. This is Kali Yuga. It's an age of quarrel and hypocrisy and criticism. Like it's characterized. It's in the definition. So that's what it's going to be. It's not going to change. But I can change me. I can find another way to relate. I can find another way to talk with others. And that can become my protection and my compass. Have I spoken favorably about Krishna today? Have I told a good story today? And that usually helps me. When I get ready and I want to say all the things that I want to say about somebody else, my sister and I, we've taken to praying to the master of the senses, Rishikesh. Oh, Rishikesh, Govinda, my senses are out of control, help. So that's my barometer. So today's been a good day. Found a pastime that I really liked, and I got to tell other people about it. So far I'm doing a good thing, but I'm sure I'm going to have to come back to it later, especially if I get on social media. I'm sure I'm going to have to come back to it later and say, but it's Ekadashi. Have I found a pastime that I really like? And then let me go tell somebody else about it. So thank you for making my day so well.
Thank you, Mother Acyuta Gopi. That's such a pleasure, and also so many points which really inspired me and also made me feel so close to so many aspects in spiritual life. So extremely grateful. I loved many points, especially the points of we receive the mood of the spiritual master during initiation. So that was such a beautiful point. So thank you for making some mornings, Ekadashi mornings so special. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. Anybody else would like to ask a question or share a comment or appreciation, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much, my brother Acyuta Gopi. Thank you so much. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Acyuta Gopi Devi Ki
Ekadashi Titi ki jai, Vaishnav Thakur
Jai.
ki jai.
Yeah. See you soon, Hare Krishna. Oh, here is Sarah Shardia Rasdevi. She raised her hand.
Hare Krishna, Acyuta Gopi. Thank you so much. I really love these classes of you and Ekadashi. So my question was, sometimes we find ourselves in a position, which is to some extent managerial. And then, I feel like, unfortunately, then we have to sometimes judge or evaluate others. And then we also might be asked, to do so, or to decide who is performing responsibilities well or not, etc. So how do we deal with the situation? We're in a position, and it's like part of our responsibilities to sometimes evaluate and even not maybe criticize, but point out mistakes in others. How do we deal if we've got that responsibility, but that we do that in a way which we don't criticize? Because for me, if someone asks me sometimes, then I have to say something about someone else, and I don't want to say it, but it's like the situation calls for it. But then afterwards, I have to be honest, I feel disturbed. My mind feels like, my mind just feels like polluted, and I've said something, about a devotee, which is not nice. So how do we deal with that situation?
Yeah, that's such a perfect question. Because, all that we can say now holds true unless you are in a managerial position or in the position of being a guru, something like that, right? So we do understand that sometimes criticism is unavoidable. Like you have to, in order for the well-being of others, to present a criticism. The first thing I think is pray hard, right? Enter into a an atmosphere and an environment of internal prayer, especially to Srila Prabhupada. I think writing out the situation first, praying to Srila Prabhupada first, is always good. Asking him to guide our judgments and guide our minds and our hearts. Because really, Srila Prabhupada can answer and reciprocate. He has that, Krishna has given these mystical powers and siddhis to all of these senior Vaishnavas and Acharyas. So we can pray. We can pray to Srila Prabhupada, even if it has to be a snap decision. And we can think, okay, I have to make this decision right now. So I might not have time to write it all down, but you can take a second. You can take a breath and pray to Srila Prabhupada first. Oh, Srila Prabhupada, I want to do my service. And this person is being asked to do service. And now I have to evaluate this service or ask how they're doing this service. You please help me. Guide me so that I don't commit offenses to your own devotees. Because really, they're all yours. My Guru Maharaj always says, on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, I would like to initiate you. I'd be so pleased to serve you. So if I'm serving also on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, I have to ask him for his advice first. And then, after we've done that, you think about it in terms of advising a child that you would have. Parents have to do this all the time. You have to acknowledge and evaluate the child's strengths and weaknesses. So somebody might be asked, it's like, we want them to dress the deities, but if they're not very good at that service, how do we say that? How do you say, this person's not the neatest, this person's not this or that, without criticizing and all of these things? It's a perfect question. And for me, in dealing with a child and dealing with others, I tend to, in my most favorite relationships, I don't like to just give a criticism of somebody shouldn't do something without a solution. Does that make sense? Like I don't like saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, without having at least an idea of, okay, but how do we fix it? Because that's really what the focus is on. So one of my keys to try and remember if I have to criticize lovingly, right? It's like, what does that even mean? If I have to criticize lovingly is to give the problem, but also a helpful resultant activity. If somebody can't serve by dressing, but maybe what they can do is this. And then that way they're still engaged, we're still engaged, and it sounds less of a criticism. Right? It would always say, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, they say he would criticize by first praising someone. He gives like a roadmap, like, he gives a little definition of how to criticize. They said he would first correct someone by praising them. And Srimad Bhagavatam also says it's such a good way. So the first thing, if we can acknowledge something that somebody does really well, they do this really, really well. It takes us out of this mood of the sourness at heart. You know what they do really well? They're really good at organizing email lists and this and that. So I don't think that they would maybe be the best for the deity service. But what if they were to set up our newsletter? This gives a managerial effect of kind of looking past this immediate problem. And so sometimes if the problem is we need somebody to cover the deity service, but sometimes if the problem is we need to find a place for this person to serve, we can acknowledge their strengths. No one is all bad, which is what we learn in this devotional service. Krishna is not rejecting anyone because no one is all bad. But maybe there's a better place that they can serve. Maybe there's a better place to find for people to be able to work with them. So if you're in that managerial position and you have to give a kind of a judgment or even a criticism, or if somebody's not doing something very well, of course, at some point you have to tell them. You can't just let them keep doing a bad job, right? Because this is our service. We have to try and make it the best we can be for Krishna. But also we can acknowledge somebody's strengths. And if you've taken the time to acknowledge what somebody does really well, and you can build that up while also saying, maybe this part isn't the best fit for you. I feel like it might be also stressing you out a little bit. It's an intense one, but this you do really well. So what if we create a space for you here? No longer is it just a criticism. You're overeating. This is wrong. This is wrong. Now we're actually caring for somebody, because that takes work. To find their strength, that takes work. That takes knowing someone. That takes Vaishnav care, right? That takes insight. That takes us looking into somebody and saying, okay, now how can I help you serve? How can I serve you? Hope that helps. Did we lose her? Oh, she's good.
Sorry, I was speaking when I was on mute. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank
Hare
you
Krishna, everyone.
again. Thank you. See you.